My name is Ryan Vandendyck. I'm from Vancouver, Canada, and I run Eden Industries, which is a video game developer. When I think impact, I think a couple things. Number one, the video game industry is really interesting because it's very easy to have a global influence. If you release a game, you can release it worldwide pretty easily across a number of different platforms. And if you have a hit game, which we have not been lucky enough to have yet, but you could be an overnight global sensation in a way. And so suddenly you're catapulted to sort of have this global stage, this global influence, which is very sort of unique amongst a lot of businesses. You're often operating maybe locally, maybe regionally, but to have that global impact is something that I think is very unique in some ways to the video game industry, and it's something that we think about. Is like, how can we have an impact, well beyond ourselves, like across the whole world? And I think there is a platform for us to make a difference in people's lives around the world. We try to make games that, they're not necessarily like Christian games. They don't have Bible verses, but introduce themes that might be important for people, like ideas of creation and overcoming darkness and these things, so that when people play them and hear them, there's something that kind of stays in their soul, and that maybe later if they read the Bible, they're like, oh, something is connecting here. I'm remembering something, and so we do really look to have that kind of global impact. But it's not just global. I feel the impact on my employees is very important. There's not a lot of Christians in the games industry, so even having just a personal impact on my employees, trying to be a Christian witness, just in the smallest kind of scope, just within my company, is very important. So when I think impact, I think very small and also though very, very big. The first person to really believe in my business was actually my mom. And so this is going back quite a ways, but when I was very young, I loved playing games, and almost in a jokingly kind of frustrated moment, my mom, she'd buy me these games and I would beat them so fast. And so she's like, you're so good at playing games, why don't you make them? And I was 8 years old and I thought, yep, that's it. That's what I'm gonna do. And, a lot of parents, their approach to their kids playing video games is like, try to limit it. You don't play many games, But my mom was very encouraging. She saw how much passion, how much love I had for it. So she was very, encouraging. And I still, made sure to do well in school. It wasn't like I was, neglecting anything. But she was always very encouraging of my kind of dream and ambition. And she was willing to, be on the phone with me for hours as I just discuss esoteric things about games or computer programming that I studied to learn it. And she was just always so encouraging and so willing to listen. And so unfortunately 15 years ago she actually passed away, but she was able to see the first games that I was able to work on and see, and so that was a very special thing for me. But yeah, when I think of kind of who was my original supporter, absolutely was my mom. The biggest thing that being involved in the Branches community has kind of shaped who I am and how I approach my business is really through this idea of community. So being an entrepreneur can be very isolating. I can't really share all my troubles with my employees, and it's a different kind of dynamic, right? Like I try to be a friendly person to them, but there's always a power dynamic. It's boss and employee, and so it's a little strange in that way. And especially as a Christian entrepreneur, the way I try to think about business is of course very, very different from a lot of entrepreneurs, right? And so before Branches, I did feel very isolated, very kind of on my own. And then being part of Branches, number one, provided that kind of community where I can be with people who are going through the same things, be connected with mentors and leaders who have advice that they've been through it before. And so that was huge, just kind of give me that community I was really looking for. But the other thing too is really helped me to change the way I look at almost everything through this lens of redemptive business, of using my company and every aspect of it to serve God. And it's not just that, okay, I'm a Christian, I want to have a business that is run on Christian principles, which is all good, right? But it really is almost kind of turning things on its head. And it really, the starting point is, the lens I'm looking through is redemptive business of Christ. How can I use all these things to, as we've sort of been hearing in some of the talks, right? You're redeeming capital, right? Money, right? You're redeeming that. You're redeeming, people and their relationship with work. You're sort of, redeeming external to work, right? Like how can we impact more than just work, more than just games, right? But it's people, it's places, and whether that's supporting other companies. If I do have an overnight massive success and millions of dollars, how can I put that to work and not just be like, yes, I'm successful, I have money, right? Like, how can I use the things God has given me? So it really, it's the community, and it's just providing me that lens with which I can view everything through this idea of redemptive business. There's a couple ways, I think, in which God has moved through my business and leadership. I think one really interesting example is there's sort of two events kind of happened in near proximity to each other. I was invited to give answers for this news article that was being written about, it was called something like the new wave of Christian game developers, something like that. And so I got to provide my thoughts about being a Christian game developer and what that means in terms of how I see games and how I see sort of the work we do. And as a result of that, I was actually asked to do an interview with another kind of media outlet. And the morning of the interview, he said, "Oh, I found this article about you. Could we talk about your faith?" And this was like not just an interview; it was like live, and there was people chatting in the comments, whatever it was. And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely, let's talk." And so he asked me not just about games, but about my faith and what that looked like for me. And I got to see in real time people posting in the comments of this interview, "Wow, I didn't know there were Christian game developers. I'm a Christian. This is like so encouraging to know there are Christians out there making games." And that was just such a amazing opportunity where I could sort of provide encouragement again to people sort of around the world. I mean, most likely in the English-speaking world is probably most of the ones who are watching that interview, but much further beyond just kind of my local sphere. And it was just an amazing blessing to be able to provide encouragement to Christian gamers around the world. So I think that was the way that God really was able to use sort of my business and my faith to kind of reach people. As I mentioned, the last couple of years have been very challenging in the video game industry. I think we're finally kind of coming out of that now. And so I'm really excited about what things look like after all the kind of chaos has sort of settled. To just look at a very practical sense, a lot of our competitors don't exist anymore because they went bankrupt, they went out of business. And so I think there is a moment for us in 2026 to really sort of capitalize on the fact that we're still here by the grace of God, and we can really expand our business. And on the one hand, that's exciting because we can have revenue and we can that's great, and I can pay my employees. But again, there's this other aspect of like when we are able to elevate our status in the industry. For me, that also means that we have a chance to speak into people's lives, reflect Jesus to a new kind of partner, new kind of audience. And one thing that's kind of always stuck with me is I worked with a number of people before I made my own company, and they said, "Ryan, you're a game developer, but you're kind of like just a normal person." And I thought, it occurred to me that a lot of people, in the tech industry, games industry, they may not have a lot of positive contact with Christians that have sort of been life-giving. And so even just having this sort of elevated status where I can, meet people, get to know them, and just reflect Christ in just my everyday demeanor, the way I act, the way I talk to people, that is very important to me. And the fact that I can kind of do it more and more people in kind of a global way, to people, again, who may not have a lot of chances to interact with Christians, is, a responsibility that I take very seriously and something I'm really looking forward to happening more in 2026 and beyond.